We got a red dot. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Akron's hottest and fastest growing show, 3-Throw to Go. I'm your host, Hank Forrester, coming to you live from Quaker Station right down in downtown Akron. Today, it is the Akron mayoral debate. We got Oregon's team on one side, we got Signs on the other. It's shaping up to be a fun and interesting conversation and an interesting event today. So make sure you tune in now. Start sharing this. Let's get it going. Let's get it trending. They're going to do opening remarks here in about 4 or 5 minutes or so. As you look around the room, there are lots of folks that are intricate parts of Akron in the room right now. If you can hear me, please say so in the comments so I know that the audio is working correctly. I'm just going to go live just with the phone today, keeping it as simple as possible to avoid any kind of buzz or any kind of technical glitches from the microphones. So we're just going to keep it real simple today, okay? I'm going to be recording live the audio as well for the pod separately on our Zoom. But in the meantime, go ahead and share this to your timelines and please join the discussion. I'm going to be monitoring the discussion from the back of the room on my laptop. So I am asking that you keep your comments respectful. Don't make me delete you. Don't make me ban anything. All right, that's all I'm asking. So point being, sounds good. All right, good, cool. Just don't make me monitor it, really, okay? Because the other day I put a post up about snow plowing and it turned into like this big political thing. So we want to keep this nice and all right. So yeah, the opening remarks are going to be taking place here. I can pan around the room if you like. I'll show you real quick what's going on. Let's take a look. All right, so just to give you an idea, there's the debate stage. Off to the right are the folks that are going to be running the interview and doing the questioning. And off to the left are our timekeepers. You can see the timekeepers got a red, a green, and a yellow to give an indicator to the candidates as far as how much time they have left to answer a question. Let's take a look around the room. All right, so we've got a lot of folks right now that have gathered. They're eating their lunch right now. And again, opening remarks are going to be in about 4 or 5 minutes. There's good old Shane Wynn. You know, you can't have an event without Akron's photographer here. But yeah, this will be live streamed here, and then Idea Stream is also here with NPR. Is that correct? All right, and so they're going to be recording it as well. Again, Eva, thank you for tuning in, but please keep your comments respectful. That's all I'm asking right now. All right, so Mayor Horrigan is over here on this side, and Josh is over here prepared, ready to go on this side. All right, so once again, folks, keep your comments respectful. That's all I'm asking. I'm going to keep the live feed going now, and I'm going to head on back to monitor. Lisa, there's only 2 candidates in this election. So you got Josh Shines and Dan Horrigan. Dan is the incumbent Democratic mayor, and Josh is the challenger on the Republican side. And so that'll be taking place here in about the election is November 5th, right? So today's their mayoral debate. So go ahead and get this trending, folks. Go ahead and share this feed wherever you feel that you want to. And again, opening remarks will be here in just a couple minutes. Hey, Scotty, if you're out there watching, I lost my pin. My 3-3-0 pin fell off. So I'm gonna need a replacement pin. So let me know where you got that, and I will. I'll make sure to get one. All right. If you have any legitimate questions or comments, not bashing either candidate, feel free to go ahead and list them in the comments, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be monitoring this feed later. So you know, it's your way to be connected later on. So, Eva, again, thank you for the comment, and I'm just, please be respectful. That's all I'm asking. So, but yeah, we're gonna get started here in just a moment. But yeah, it's really fun. I mean, you know, here we go. We've got action. We got action. All right, guys, I'm gonna go back and monitor the feed. Have fun, enjoy. Here we go. Oh, and now it's going away. All right, and he's walking away. Okay. Just so you all know, as far as the network goes, I need a break, so I'm going to take about 10 days off. Our next feed after this will be from the Oddball Odd Mall. All right, I'm going to shut up. Here we go. We're going to be at the Odd Market, Oddball Place or whatever. All right, here we go.
Good afternoon. Or I should say the end of a rainy morning. It's not quite afternoon yet. I'd like to welcome you to today's debate between the two Akron mayoral candidates for the upcoming. I am Bruce Wingus, president of the Akron Press Club. I want to thank you for coming out today. By being here today, you're taking part in the dialogue that's so important in moving our community forward and keeping our community informed. Your support helps fund scholarships for journalism and communications college students. Between the Akron Press Club and the John S. Knight Memorial Scholarship Fund, scholarships of $5,000 each were awarded to 9 students this past spring. That $45,000 for those young people does make a difference, and we couldn't do it without you being here, so thank you for doing that. Upcoming, we have what promises to be an interesting panel that will talk about the impeachment process, how it's worked in the past, how it may work in the present. That'll be November 20th here at Quaker Station. We have some people from the University of Akron Law School and from the University of Akron's Bliss Institute on that panel discussion. It should be interesting. You can find information about that event and other press club information, including our membership information, at our website, akronpressclub.org. And if you haven't joined the press club, why not? Take the time to do it. It's a good thing. Also should let you know that we are streaming live today on WBIZ and WCPN, Public Radio and Public TV, and that the debate will be broadcast on both those stations later this evening. We'll get started here in just a second. I'd like to invite the candidates to come on up to the stage, please. Now let's begin today's debate. Josh Symes is the Republican challenger for Akron Mayor. He's been a candidate for the Ohio House and Akron City Council. He has experience as a Summit County bailiff and deputy clerk of courts. Mr. Symes is on the Summit County Central Committee, Republican Central Committee, excuse me. He also is a ring announcer for mixed martial arts, professional wrestling, and USA boxing throughout Ohio. He is an owner of Bob's Hamburg in Akron and a former longtime manager of a pub on Akron's West Hill. He lives in Akron's North Hill and has a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Akron. Mr. Horrigan, Dan Horrigan, is a Democratic incumbent for Akron Mayor. He is seeking his second term as mayor. Prior to taking office in 2016, he was a Summit County Clerk of Courts and also served on the Akron City Council. In addition to his experience in public office, Mr. Horrigan was taught at St. Vincent St. Mary and Stowe Monroe Falls High School. He has a bachelor's degree in economics from Kent State, an education degree from the University of Akron. Mr. Horrigan also lives in North Hill. We have a panel who will pose questions to our candidates, and the panel consists of Michael Douglas, former Beacon Journal editorial page editor, M.L. Schulze, WKSU reporter, and Jason Sokol, WAKR Midday Post. The candidates have not seen the questions before today's debate. We have 2 people from the Akron Area League of Women Voters who are our timekeepers. They are Barbara and Oscar Hussiger. Thank you for doing that. Now, about the debate itself, the order of the questions was determined by a coin flip. The first question will go to Mr. Steins. He will have 90 seconds to answer. Mr. Horrigan will then have 40 seconds for rebuttal. Then the process begins again with the next question. Each candidate will be asked the same number of questions. Our timekeepers will use cards to let the candidates know when their time is up. Yellow, if you will hold up the yellow, please, means you have 15 seconds to go, and red means stop. Finally, at the end of the questioning by the panel, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask the other candidate one question, and each candidate will also have 90 seconds for closing statements. I would like to ask you, the audience, to please hold your applause until the end of the debate so that we can hear all the questions from each candidate. So let's get started. The first question goes to Mr. Steins.
Mr. Steins, welcome. What is the most vital city service and what is the most effective way to deliver it?
The most vital city service, well, I don't know if I pick one over the other, but there's the three basic ones. One is to pave the streets, one is to plow the snow, and the other one would be to pick up the trash. Picking up the trash, I guess, would be the most vital because that's done every week. The others are done on schedules, and then the third, plowing the snow, is done in response to a snowstorm. And so I would say picking up the trash is the most vital one, for sure. And one thing I know is there's no Republican way or Democratic way to pick up the trash. But there's the way they do it now, and then there's the way that we would do it, which would be pretty close to the same way. We might try to get the glass recycling, maybe work a little bit better on the recycling program and the awareness for the people of the city. I know that they want to recycle, and they want their glass recycled, and they want everything recycled. And I also know that we're just having some problems with the contractors and people that want glass. Nowadays, they're not paying for it. So, I'd say picking up the trash is the most important city service, yes.
Are you saying the contractors are the most effective way to do it?
No, I think that we, picking it up ourselves is the most effective way to do it. But contractors aren't buying the recycled glass. So I think that that's just one of the reasons we stopped recycling the glass.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Horrigan.
About 3 or 4 months into my first term on city council, a guy had called me. We had missed his trash, and our trash pickup was on Monday. And he left me a message. Back then, it was just a voicemail at the city council office, and said, listen, you guys missed my trash today, but I'm a Republican, so you probably won't pick it up. So I immediately called the service director's office and said, listen, you need to send a truck out there immediately, just because there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up trash or do city services. Being the most efficient is obviously the highest priority. Public safety is probably our #1 city service when it comes to the effect on neighborhoods. You can't unrank sanitation, snow plowing, and all of the other ones, whether it's parks maintenance, you can't unrank them as that far below. The public safety ranks as the top city service as we provide for neighborhoods and downtown and the city.
Next question goes to Mr. Horrigan.
Mayor Horrigan, what lessons did you learn from last year's snow removal experience, and what improvements have you adopted?
Well, there's probably nobody that has been more critical of the efforts, and even internally, about the snow removal efforts back in mid-January. To me, it gave us a tremendous opportunity to look at a city service and say, how do we do it better? I was born in 1962. I do remember the snowstorm of 1978. I don't think I saw my sidewalk until May. Now, that's not an excuse. At some particular point, and I don't know whether all the publications back then received thousands of letters to the editor about the removal of the snow that took about 3 weeks to get done. What we did is put together a task force immediately after that, along with Council and Council President Margot Somerville, who said, how do we do this a little bit better? What's the strategy? Should we be able to do it? I remember on council when the theory and the practice was we wouldn't go into neighborhoods until there were 5 inches of snow. Never really necessarily agreed with that, and this opportunity gave us to say, where are the resources and where are we putting them? So as we put them, we worked back through, got rid of the ODOT contract, didn't really get rid of it, but kind of worked with them so they could do more of the expressways, And it's not like we're turning over the snow plowing to ODOT and it's Joe's plowing, and no offense to Joe, but ODOT does a professional job on all the expressways all over the state of Ohio. So as we put those resources back here, it has to do with also the passage of the gas tax. We're able to put those resources and those trucks back in the city to be able to do those routes, also deploy more plows in and around neighborhoods, whether it's clearing intersections in each particular ward. So it's adding those resources to be able to do it. Instead of having 57 trucks, we'll actually have more to be able to do that.
If I may follow up, in terms of the funding, with losing the ODOT contract, where do you find that money to replace that?
Gas tax. Gas tax back in July. And going into that, knowing that the gas tax was going to hopefully pass and being on that commission to help it, those resources, that infrastructure to be able to clear it, we had made plans to be able to do that and to work with ODOT along the way.
Mr. Sines, rebuttal?
Well, the one thing about this new policy and the way we're changing things is I think it is gonna work better. I don't know if using the gas tax money as a short-term fill on that is gonna be the best way, but we'll see on how much we get off the revenue. Cars are better and more efficient now, so those are projections. But I do think the most effective thing is gonna be outfitting all the 1-ton trucks, the pickup trucks with the plows. We're gonna have cross-trained employees from other departments. That's what we do in the restaurant business, so I see that as being a good move to do also. And like in the old days, we did always have plows on all the trucks and stuff, and having equipment ready to go is probably the main thing.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, Akron has many major street projects underway currently. What steps should be taken during street construction projects to minimize the disruption to businesses and residents?
Well, I think the major problem currently with all the construction, which it's a good sign, it's showing that Akron's growing and we need bigger roads and stuff. But there's so much construction going on at one point right now that people can't get around the city, especially downtown on Main Street. There's companies that aren't getting their deliveries. The UPS drivers now are not delivering. They have to be picked up their packages. So we definitely have to work with the businesses, because if that's impacting people's jobs and livelihoods, and make sure that they have routes and ways to get their packages and get their deliveries and get their stuff out, and that people can come and visit them. Some of the other projects around the city, I just think the main thing that people talk about when they talk about the construction is they hate that we're taking 2-lane roads, making them 1 lane, and putting the bike lanes in. And I know people, there are people that use the bike lanes, but if you're inconveniencing a large number of motorists to encourage bike riding, I think we have to look at that as an overall plan and put some of those 2-lane roads back in, and let the cars, people with the cars, get to their jobs and stuff too.
So fewer bike lanes, more room for cars.
I don't have a problem adding the bike lane, but we have to keep the lanes for the cars, because that's what's causing the major traffic problems right now.
Can you repeat your question, Kate?
Akron has many major street projects currently underway. What steps should be taken during street construction projects to minimize disruption for businesses? And I might add the question, what steps have you taken to try to minimize that disruption?
The first question first and the second question second. But it's absolutely, there is an unprecedented amount of construction going on in and around the city. But it's also what progress looks like. Some of the infrastructure that we've not been able to replace is over 100 years old. And we have found a wood water line on High Street that we had to replace. We found a valve the other day from 1884. It was working, but it needed to be replaced. When you throw in on top of ODOT doing all their heavy highway work in and around the city, it adds up to about $500 million just on the expressways. Then add into the consent decree in the sewer and water project. Then our infrastructure improvements is what progress looks like. We did start a website called driveakron.com that gives you ways in and around that construction and that traffic. And the whole idea with either bike lanes or cars, we have been an automobile society since the invention of the automobile. It kind of ran everything off. We're trying to become a little bit more different modes of transportation and encouraging when it comes to a bike grid in and around downtown and those neighborhoods and how they better connect. There's not going to be a bike lane on every single street, even though I do encourage biking because I do quite a bit of it myself. But the number one complaint, you can ask City Council, the number one complaint from City Council members is speeding on our city streets. And how do you reduce speeding? We couldn't necessarily put an officer on every corner with radar. What we can is change the perception of how wide those streets are to be able to do that. That's the goal on all of these things. So if you look at Talmadge Avenue or Kenmore Boulevard, yes, it's not been popular, but people have slowed down.
Next question goes to Mr. Horgan.
Mr. Horgan, there is, as you just noted, a tremendous amount of construction going on, especially downtown. How does the city balance the need for its downtown to be rebuilt with the need to be fair to every part of the city and how it distributes funds and takes care of needs?
Well, there is a balance in there, and when you're able to receive literally millions of dollars to be able to remake your Main Street facade, you really can't necessarily say no. We were one of 20, I think, communities across the country that received 2 federal Tiger grants to be able to remake downtown and what it's supposed to look like. That doesn't, the argument I always think has said that you can't do downtown and neighborhoods at the same time. Issue 4 allows us to do that when it comes to public investment, whether that's resurfacing, whether that's starting the Great Streets program in small business. So there is a balance, and I think we're striking a fair balance when it comes to investment in the neighborhoods. How do they become better connected and their business districts, but also looking at downtown and knowing that it is a huge business district. With about 50,000 people, with students and people coming downtown to work every day, that's our largest generation, of a district. And so taking care of that is as essential, excuse me, and as important as making sure the neighborhoods get their fair share of investment too.
Rebuttal, Mr. Simon.
The one thing I've noticed, I came to Akron in 1993. I moved here to go to college, and pretty much since 1993, we've been revitalizing downtown. Maybe the first 2 years it wasn't, but when we started working on the baseball stadium, ever since then, we've had construction to revitalize downtown. And I think that's why the neighborhoods feel that they've been slighted. They see 20 years of investment in downtown. And just recently, we've seen some construction in the Kenmore Boulevard area, and then Talmadge Avenue's been up and down. There's been about 3 construction projects going there. But I think it's a perception of the people, they want their share of the money in their neighborhoods too, and they don't want to see it all going downtown. And I think that just because it's constantly been going downtown, that's one of the reasons they think that.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, given the cost of the combined sewer overflow project, do you foresee a need for an additional increase in sewer rates over the next 4 years? And what will you do to minimize the cost of the combined sewer project?
Now that the combined sewer project, I believe that the costs probably are up to about 2.4 million or billion when we get done with this whole thing. And it seems like it's been going on a long time. In the beginning, when it was projected out at about 1.2 billion, and there were 200,000 residents of Akron, I did the math, and I think that each person, we should have had the ability to just pay our flat share then, and then we could have opted out of our sewer increase. Of course, that wasn't a reasonable option because we knew the construction costs were gonna rise. And I can't promise that I'm not gonna raise the sewer rates. I have to really dive into the hardcore numbers and know what we're gonna need for that. I know that we need the sewer project. We couldn't live the way we were living. It's just that we put it off for so long. If we could have been started this 30 years ago when we first were supposed to, like other communities, we could have kept the cost down and drug it out a little bit longer. So it'll be interesting to see how much more we have to do to finish that project.
So are there ways that you think we could minimize the cost further?
I don't think we can minimize the cost. I think the cost is pretty much set on where we're going to be headed with it. In the beginning, we could have done a couple more things. When I ran for city council in 2009, I proposed some plans that eventually we ended up adopting. And there's a lot we could do, like in Minneapolis, where they took, back then we could have done some things. They took the downspouts out of the sewers and put them back into the yards and flower beds and stuff like that. A lot more rain barrels, but I think we're past that now.
Thank you, Mr. Sines. A rebuttal from Mr. Porter.
Well, just to clarify a couple of things, the total cost of the project is still right around $1.2 billion. I've been able to save about $65 million so far over the first 3 years, and we have a couple of amendments proposed to be able to save even more. And I've made a pledge not to raise water rates that affect sewer rates until 2021 or 2022. We actually did start this project back in the early 70s with the Clean Water Act, and the city's been working actively with the engineering department since about 1993 to be able to address it. It's just that it requires a lot more than 90 seconds to be able to explain the complexity of it, though. The funding formula as part of it has always been back on a user fee. We've received very little money from the federal government to be able to do this. And of the over 700 consent decrees, Akron has the most stringent of any city across the country. And so as we work, it's a daily and weekly process for us to be able to find more money to be able to do that, to load those sewer bills.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Horry.
Just a follow-up quickly.
Sure.
Were you saying that sewer rates will go up in?
No, I didn't say that they will. I said I made a promise not to raise them if reelected until, you know, seeing where things are, but no, I made a promise not to raise them before 2021.
Okay. Back to downtown. Did you anticipate so much disruption with downtown construction? And when will it be done? And should businesses be compensated? And how, in the end, will you know the project was worth it?
That's 4 questions, so I'll take them one at a time. Did we anticipate the amount of disruption? We have not been able to change the facade of what downtown has looked like for 100 years. Josh is right. A lot has been going on downtown, but a lot of that is a effect of what the market is. And so, you know, I give a lot of credit to former Mayor Plisqualik about doing the stadium and doing the O'Neill's building and doing a lot of those things. But this is actually an unprecedented digging up of all of that infrastructure, which includes all of the utilities. Did we anticipate that? Yes. Should businesses be compensated? We meet with them fairly regularly to be able to discuss those things, be able to, so they can work out those logistic things. How to get deliveries? Can we move some things around? Whether they should be compensated or not, we have offered them some compensation when it comes to facade and other things. And at the end of the day, when you look at being able to change the face of what your downtown looks like, you know, it's part, maybe back to that balance of the neighborhood in downtown. Yes, it's a tremendous project to be able to remake, you know, over what may have not been able to change for the last 100 years. And so I would do it again to be able to do that too. I may have missed 1 or 2 questions in there, so.
You got them all except for the one about exactly how would you measure that it's worth it?
I think on top of it would be business activity and just the aesthetics of what it's supposed to look like, but it's supposed to be an attractive place that people want to go. We want to see the increase in downtown housing. And if you look at the Bowery project, which is a $42 million investment into that block right next to Lot 3,
Thank you.
Those are those measures.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Sines. I'm sorry, your vote. I wasn't keeping score.
No, that's all right. About the downtown, I do know that they've, the businesses down there are highly affected. I have a friend down there, his business is 33% of what it was before the project. There's law firms whose phones aren't working on a regular basis. Not constantly not working, but they'll go in one day and the phone lines are down and they need it. So it's affecting the businesses. I'm not sure we have a plan or funds to really compensate them or pay them. I know that the city and the county do help some of them out by maybe just ordering their office lunches and they send their workers there and stuff. So there's a lot we can do, but I don't think we're going to be per se bailing out the downtown businesses.
Okay, now the next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Okay, Mr. Sines, Akron received a lot of attention when it announced plans to abandon and repurpose the Innerbelt. What do you think should be done with that land? And how do you plan to use that project to reunite the West Side neighborhoods that were cut off by it?
As a North Hill resident, I use the Innerbelt every day to get to my my store, and I see a lot of traffic. I mean, those 2 lanes now that are open are constantly filled with traffic. So I think we need to reevaluate how much road we want to keep there, because there's a lot of people, especially from the north side, that use that to get to Cleveland. That's the way, especially mostly because ODOT has that one ramp shut down from Route 8 to north, probably. But right now, that's getting a lot of traffic. As far as repurposing the area, I mean, right now, it's just, I'm not sure it's big enough to add some things into, or it's small enough to make other projects. So I would propose just keeping it open as a road, really. I think that's the best use for it.
Can you just repeat that for me real quick? It's just,
The city received a lot of attention when it announced plans to abandon and or repurpose part of the Innerbelt. And what should be done with that property and what can be done to reintegrate the neighborhoods on the west side that were cut off when that project was built?
well, that is part of the plan to be able to do that. In looking at the Innerbelt and repurposing it, those roads, Dart and Rand, only had about 15 seconds of commute time to get to East Avenue and get to 77 North. So it didn't feel like it was a mitigating circumstance to not be able to do it. It was also cost prohibitive. It was gonna be about $30 million to be able to repurpose those bridges and do the roads, and plus ODOT was looking to, get rid of it. We have a very unique opportunity with about 37 acres to be able to add to downtown. The goal is through a pretty strict planning process, how do we turn that into not remaking Main Street, but a place maybe where it's live, work, and play. And I've been to multiple planning sessions with multiple ideas to say, well, we have to get this right. And there are a lot of ideas out there to say, hey, what should you be doing with this? We want to get this right. So it's going to take a little bit of time to be able to do that. It looks as it's wrapping up now. But we want to put the right thing there. It could be a jobs per acre, like Roman Road. It could be an extended city park. There has to be some green space, maybe even a water feature. All of those different ideas, I think, need to be incorporated into what we eventually add, what the Interbelt used to be. And I think you'll make that natural connection when it comes to the towpath to be able to reconnect those west side neighborhoods back to downtown.
Next question goes to Mr. Horgan.
Mayor Horgan, both redlining and the highway system, as we just discussed, have divided older cities, both here in Ohio and elsewhere, certainly Akron. What could you do to reintegrate neighborhoods like Summit Lake and bring them back into the fold?
Well, what we have done is actually paid attention to Summit Lake, and I think a lot of that has to do with looking at neighborhoods that have seen a complete lack of public investment, but it also can't be a top-down approach. And I kind of use the Highland Square model, not that that was a red line neighborhood, is that it needs to be an organic approach of what needs to go there next. And so, in working with the Metro Parks and the Reach Center and the Summit Lake Neighborhood Council, asking them, what do you want to see out of Summit Lake? What should be here? I mean, you saw for the first time the marathon go through there, the crowds were tremendous right up the towpath to see all those runners come through. Activating that more is a better idea, so it is, because it is so close to downtown and that connection. It also has to do with all of those other neighborhoods that need to be better connected. How do you go into those? It could be a housing concern, it could be a business concern. That's why we identified 10 business districts across the city with the Great Streets program to try to help those businesses. Those make stronger neighborhoods. But I don't want it to be a top-down approach. I don't want to come in and tell them, hey, listen, we're going to do street lights and sidewalks, and you guys got to fend for yourself. It's got to be a more organic approach of what they want to see out of their neighborhood business district and the housing district that they live in.
Rebuttal, Mr. Science.
As I drive by Summit Lake, I often vision how it used to be when the park was there and stuff. And that's Bob Hamburg used to overlook that before the highway divided it, and that was part of the mystique of going there. So recently I look at it a lot, and I drive by there almost every day when I go to the bank. And I think there's some potential to put some new housing, whether it's apartments or condos. There's a whole, where the school used to be, and softball fields, there is a ton, I don't know the exact size, but I'm thinking probably a couple acres, where you could definitely put a nice housing project in there. And that would revitalize that neighborhood instantly, I think.
Next question goes to Mr. Science.
The Elevate Akron report said African Americans are being excluded from economic opportunity. What would you do to change that in the next 4 years?
In the beginning of this campaign, I went to an event in Bookdale where the newspapers and everybody brought everybody together, and we all sat at tables and we went around and we talked about things. And surprisingly, at that meeting, I found that they do. African Americans do feel like they're excluded from opportunity here in the city, and they also think they're excluded from educational opportunities and job opportunities. So I definitely would want to work with minorities of all types, encourage job creation and small business ownership. I'm a small businessman. I know what it takes to get a business off the ground. I know what it takes to run businesses, and I employ 8 people. I know that's not, Akron has huge employers that employ thousands, but if we can have 100 small businesses employing 8 people or 10 people or 15 people, my other restaurant, we have 30 employees. I think that's how we're gonna, we have to create opportunities to work with them and help them. Sometimes the simplest stuff, getting your incorporation and everything done is what they need help with.
So what would you do specifically? One thing that you, as a small businessman, you could translate to helping?
Yeah, almost like COSI does, the Council of Small Enterprise. I'd sit down with minorities or people that want to start businesses and help them get the stuff started, get them off the ground, work on their business plans, and get their stuff filed. So I would actually sit down with them and work on it.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horgan.
Elevate Akron shined a light on what many people saw as common sense, but I'm unafraid to measure ourselves at some particular point, and it's why I specifically have gone to every single high school and the juvenile detention center over the last 4 years. We had 300,000 people that lived in this city when I was born. Now we have 2. And my question is, where'd they go? Well, we know where they went, but why'd they go? And I think it's one of those key questions. I've approached this job and every public service job and asking that customer service question. Tell us what you want. If you're leaving somewhere for an economic opportunity, what can we do? How about Stark State and community college? If you're going for something else, how about college and career academies through the Akron Public Schools? Does that give you a better track? We're trying to fix a couple generations of events that have gone on that have led to these particular things, and it's going to take a little bit of while to fix, but we're committed to be able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Horrigan. Next question goes to Mr. Horrigan.
Mr. Horrigan, how will your Office of Integrated Development make a difference that Akron residents and businesses can identify with?
When you look at the identified business districts across the city, and just the 10, and there are some smaller ones in pockets, each one of those have different needs. And I think in the past, and it's not a criticism, we were siloed off. And I don't even think as a city, but I think as organizations, you get siloed off. So engineering may be planning one thing, planning may be planning something else, and economic development may be working on something else. Now they're all sitting in the same room, kind of sharing that information. It kind of seems like it's common sense to some, but we weren't doing that. We weren't planning and engineering and economic development around one particular plan to say, all right, what are we doing with this particular project? So the residents should be able to see a more cohesive plan when it comes to development, or when it comes to planning, and when it comes to fixing some of these roads.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
Yeah, one of the things, as a small businessman, I can bring these experiences. The city of Akron has pretty much been run the same way, at least in the last 40 years, but maybe before that. So I think we do need to look at every office and see things like that, that when you have 3 different sections of planning and they're not together, they're not all on one page. And as a small businessman, I think that that's probably going to be one of my bigger strengths, is being able to analyze and reorganize the city services and the offices and try to combine some of that stuff together.
Have you taken a look at this Office of Integrated Development to determine what you agree with it?
I haven't dived into the, like really thoughtfully looked at it at this time, but I would look at every office and every department in the city in that manner.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, you've said the city subsidizes development partners and the big loser is Akron residents. What specifically do you mean by that?
I think that the city has a small handful of people that do care and want to invest in the city. Developers, construction people, people that want to make things better for the city of Akron. But at times I see where the city gives a lot more of the money for the project, the developer puts up a little bit, and then in the end, the developer is the one that ends up reaping the benefits. It's their restaurant that's in that place. It's their apartments that they're collecting the rent on. And there's no means that they pay the city back, let's say, for that money that they gave them in the beginning. So the city will put up like $2 million, and then the developer will put up like $1 million. Well, in the end, I think we should be checking, if the guy makes a $5 million profit at the end of that, in the coming up years, we should be looking to recover some of that money. And I don't think that the developers, they care about the city and they're trying to make things better, and so I'm not trying to put the developers down. It's just, I think the way we fund some of it, we need to look at a little bit better.
So how do you change that model, or maybe how do you recoup that money on the back end?
I would think you would write things into the like parameters into the contracts where, if we help you build this 30-unit apartment complex and then you have it fully rented and you're collecting $1,500 rents off those 30 units, after 10 years, we'd like to maybe settle up.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horrigan.
There is definitely more than one economic development game that you have to be in. And in the line from the West Wing, when Jed tells CJ, he needs to be in the room to make those decisions. If you're not in the room when they're making those decisions, and quite frankly, they're going to go ahead and invest elsewhere. And so we've taken a particular look at what are the particular investments and what do we invest as a city to this particular big project. Look at Romig Road that adds 1,500 jobs. We had very little cost in all of the acquisition and the demolition in that. It didn't necessarily incentivize that move outside of TIP to be able to do that. Other projects are going to be a little bit different. If you look historically at what Bowery, we have a significant amount of money in that. But If you look at the payback when it comes to people downtown, they're shopping, the income tax is developed. There's a model that works out there that we've been able to use, and I think quite successfully.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Horry.
You've committed to a city population of 250,000 by 2050. What progress have you made in your first term, and how can Akron keep younger people from leaving the city?
Well, we'll go to the first question first. Obviously, progress is going to be measured at one particular data point as we saw the census estimates. I've always used the 200,000 person figure as the city's population, and as it has to be attractive. So not only to senior citizens, but we have to work with, and we do a very good job of working with the university and the Akron Public Schools and every organization. I've gone out there, I can't tell you, thousands of times and asked people, what would it get you to stay? I can't recreate a beach and I can't recreate a mountain. But you have a lot of things here that I think are pretty special. When it comes to, do you want a more vibrant downtown? Do you want a more vibrant neighborhood? What are the things that the customers want? And those are the questions that we ask on a consistent basis. So I expect to see growth when we start to give those things, wrapping up downtown, more new housing, all of those things particularly work together to be able to help grow Akron's population. I think and I know we can be the best mid-sized city in the Midwest.
Do you have a number in mind for the end of your second term, where the population figure will be?
Well, you ask tough questions. I'd like to see growth over 200,000. I'd like to see growth over 200,000.
Rebuttal, Mr. Science.
I remember when that plan came out, I thought to myself that I doubt we will ever get back to a city of 250,000. I think we can encourage young people to move here, and we can try to grow the downtown and the apartments and make an attractive place to live. I just think the realistic part of it is people are moving out of the city. The working people that work downtown, they want to live in the suburbs now. They can't afford, we're known for high taxes on our property here in Akron, and they can go live in the suburbs and get a little bit better house for a little bit cheaper taxes. And then the water bill is another reason that we're chasing people off. And we're even chasing landlords off who don't want to buy houses in Akron now.
Thank you, Mr. Science. Next question goes to Mr. Science.
Mr. Sines, we've talked about the population of Akron, and refugees have kept Akron's population relatively stable over the last decade. So how should the city respond given a national policy that's cutting the number of refugees allowed in America by more than 3/4 and has curtailed other immigration?
The one good thing, living in North Hill, growing up in North Hill and being a part of a refugee family that we came here in the 19 teens, I've always felt a connection to the immigrants and the refugees in our neighborhoods. I know a number of them right now, and some of them work in our businesses. And I actually just read a great article about how to integrate them and train them in our businesses. But as far as the national politics of the refugee process, Akron will handle what is given to us, our share with our. We're down to one institute now. They kind of the other one cut out, but Akron's always going to be set up and welcoming. We're a welcoming city, and we love our immigration, and we love our refugees and our immigrants, and they are hardworking people who have been given an opportunity at the American dream. And if the federal government does cut our number, I think we'll still be welcoming and opening, and be a great place for the refugees to come to.
Well, I think it's a topic. Thank you. Well, I think it's a topic that we agree on, and thank you for acknowledging that we're a welcoming city. I did that on purpose because we do have capacity for growth. We do need more people here. And how's our population going to get to 250,000? It's going to be by people coming from all over. And we need to be welcoming for everybody. And so as we continue to do that, the one kind of silver lining is that with the current national policy, it's kind of given that first wave and even the second wave of refugees kind of a time to settle in and to get a little bit more acclimated when it comes to transportation, education, all of that. We're still going to have open doors. We're still going to have open arms for everybody that wants to come in the city to make it as diverse and inclusive for everybody.
Next question goes to Mr. Horry.
The tent city and the work of Sage Lewis has certainly raised the profile of homelessness in the city. Mayor, what is the answer to Akron's homeless problem?
First, I think there's been not a strong enough acknowledgement of the great work that the Continuum of Care provides historically throughout the city to be able to address the homeless problem. And it's just not one problem. You just don't end up homeless. It usually, there are some other issues, whether it's mental health, whether it's education, whether it's opiates. How we address that is that, and I think I think we have done a fairly good job of being able to address that. What are the needs of people that are homeless? Do they need just to get into transitional and emergency housing? Do they need mental health? Those are all of the things that we provide to the tune of about $5 million a year to the Continuum of Care. Is it perfect? Does everybody's needs get met? I don't think so. Can we do better? Maybe. Are there some ideas out there that I think we're trying? Yes. But as far as the highlight or the plight of homeless on this one particular problem, it hasn't stopped our efforts to be able to help everybody that's out there that goes through some sort of issue when it comes to homelessness.
How do we do better? Because as we know, there were some people in the tent city who it just didn't work out going to some of these places within the continuum of care. How can we do better for those folks?
There's also an accountability. If you ask somebody, hey, listen, we'd like to find you transitional housing, they have to want to go. And it's kind of a back and forth. You can't just, we're not going to be able to just pick up people and say, listen, you need to move here because you can't stay here. There are zoning and housing regulations when it comes to a lot of those different things. But I obviously thought a daytime drop-in center maybe would help.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
I think the homeless problem situation here in Akron is very, very unique because we did have a camp that kind of came together and grew, and then we did have a little bit of a failure in trying to place those people. In moving forward, I mean, I would really look at building a village. You can build some of these tiny home structures, putting in like a day center, a shower house, bathrooms, everything they need to succeed in life. And also in that center have the social services that can help them get on their feet. Also evaluate some of them for whether it is mental health, substance abuse, what is causing the problem. But I would really put them somewhere and try to build a little village.
And how do you balance the needs there with needing a village that you're proposing and the needs of the neighbors in that area? Because that was one of the concerns over 15 Broad.
Well, I'm sure that if you're a neighbor of wherever we would want to put this village, you're going to have some issues with it. And I think that'd be careful where we really have to look where we put it. I drive around the city and I scope out lots all the time where I think it'd be great. It's just rezoning them and making that possible.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
In the past, foreign investment has been a key element of the city's economic development strategy. That is less so currently. What role should foreign investment be playing in Akron's economic development?
I know from over the years, I had a lot of conversations with former county executive Russ Pry, who's a good friend of mine, and Mayor Don Pasquale also. And I know that they would go overseas, mostly in Europe, and they would take trips, and they would go almost to conventions of these companies, these factories. You know, we've been to Italy, with plastics companies from Italy to here. And I think there is a share, I mean, you have to go out, you have to find those projects. You have to go to Germany, and you have to go to France and stuff to find these people. And I definitely think that needs to be a plan of Akron, because we have workers. We have a great, hardworking generation of people here. We just need to bring some companies in that need them.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horton.
Yeah, the only thing I think I would disagree in the question is being less so. I think it's just been a rebalancing act when it comes to that. We still do the foreign direct investment. We're still working with a lot of different companies when it comes to growth here. And I think personally that we need to rebalance those efforts to be able to take care of those neighborhoods and those neighborhood business districts. As we've come across the entire economic development realm, we partner with the county and the chamber. We have specific roles to be able to help our local companies grow, but also do foreign direct investment. I just wanted to see a better balance, that's all. And I think it's proved to be successful when you can help local companies grow, whether it's by 1 person or 10 or 50. I think those efforts are going to bear stronger fruit.
Can I just follow up quickly?
Sure.
Mr. Sines, do you agree with that? Is it a good rebalancing, or would you change things and put more emphasis?
I'm not sure what percentage of balance we're actually in now. I think we're doing all right though right now. I think that, I think probably one of the main criticisms of the prior administration was there was too much overseas travel. And right now I don't hear any of that, so I think we're at a good spot right now.
Next question goes to Mr. Horry.
Mr. Horgan, given the Ohio Supreme Court's decision striking down local hiring requirements, what can Akron and other cities do to increase local employment in public works projects?
Well, it was disappointing to say the least that they saw it that way with a $1 billion plus project, having local firms doing as much as the work. And I've always thought, you know, if as many people in Akron can do the work, and then JEDS and then county, it's a pretty good balance to be able to keep that money local. We've gone through and are working through our contractual obligations when it comes to local hiring. Can't necessarily favor one over the other because it is low and best bid. So we're actually working through some of those guidelines, but it's also how do we get some of those companies that are more local, how do we get them trained up so they do get a favorable bond rating, so we do get them located here so they can get some of that work. So it's just not, you can't just sign something and say, hey, listen, we're going to do it this way. You have to work through some of those procedures a little bit quicker.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
One of the reasons that the court didn't like that was that because we were picking, you know, you were locked into some people and you were using some people without having the general opportunity for everyone to apply and bid on those projects. So I think our policy of using the lowest and best bids is the best policy moving forward. To only use local contractors was leaving it open for us to pay a lot of extra money out there on the table for everybody.
Follow up, Mr. Horgan, do you
Sure.
see any alternative to a law on hiring? Do you see a program or something that could move to the forefront?
Well, yes, we work with the Urban League quite closely when it comes to that. But to follow on the other, the capacity inside the city of Akron when it comes to the number of firms that can do that work, we're never going to be able to do all of that. The goal was always to make sure that they had the best opportunity to be able to do that, to keep that money as local as possible. It's still going to take some work to be able to do that, but we need to kind of staff up when it comes to, you know, whether it's the trades and the construction and everybody else to be able to get that work in the city.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Let's talk about gun violence here. We know that the state restricts local governments from adopting their own gun laws, but what can the city of Akron do within the city to deal with gun violence?
As a bailiff, I had a lot of first-hand experience with people that committed gun crimes or were carrying a gun when they were committing another crime, whether it was a robbery, drug sales. There was a lot is combined. A lot of times you're committing another crime and you have a gun on you. And the best thing we could do is we need to maintain our prosecution of when you're caught with an illegal gun or you're using a gun in a crime, we have to stick to those mandatories and stop pleading the cases down to a different charge, which then keeps the gun charge and the specs off of that. Every day we wake up, or almost every day I wake up and I hear of another shooting in this town or a robbery. And as a small business owner, when it gets dark at night, you know, when I'm got my back turned to the door, I wonder who's walking in there. And I know the feeling of the people in the city is that they don't feel safe. Whether it's adding more cops, getting the prosecutor's office to not plead out the gun charges, or just taking more guns off the street. Whether it's in, you know, when they search cars, a lot of times in stops and stuff, they find illegal weapons a number of times. So it's going to be a combination of more police enforcement, not pleading out those gun charges, and then also, you know, taking those guns in those stops or searches.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horgan.
I would even take it a few steps further. I'm part of a cadre or cohort of mayors across the country and across the state of Ohio who work collaboratively in trying to reduce gun violence in each one of their cities. Had lunch with the governor a couple of weeks ago, Mayor of Dayton and the Mayor of Youngstown, to talk through his proposals about his recent proposal when it comes to reducing and red flag laws. And those, we told him it doesn't go far enough, but it's a good start on the beginning side. We wanted to make more proposals when it came to high capacity magazines, assault weapons, and universal background checks. it's a more complex problem when it comes to gun violence. It's usually a symptom of maybe the lack of educational or economic opportunity. So we can do both. We work very closely with the prosecutor's office and the judges to be able to make sure that those charges, that people who are using guns and charges, do go to jail.
Next question goes to Mr. Horry.
Well, what can be done to reduce youth violence in the city?
About a year into my term, we actually received a planning grant and started a youth violence prevention program with roughly about 20 organizations that each have a role. What the city has done specifically, and what we heard, is that there needs to be more recreational opportunities. In the middle of the summer, we just ended our first midnight basketball program. Next Monday, we will start off our second midnight basketball program. That actually isn't at midnight, it starts at 6, but that was the name. So we're calling it night basketball. But this gives people more of an opportunity. But we just don't get them there to play basketball. We get them there with the prosecutor's office, with counselors, with everybody else. How do you get your driver's license back? How do you do some of these things? And what are the job opportunities that you have to be able to be out there? And we're targeting ages, we're targeting people 15 to 24 years old. Even besides that, if you look back, we've added more recreational opportunities in the summertime when it comes to the pools, when it comes to the splash pads. And it seems like, well, you're just doing these things for recreational. No, we need to give people more things to do. But we also need to be able to work them through the system so they don't necessarily go back into a life of crime or use a gun to be able to do something. It's a complex approach, but we've taken a specific and come up with a youth violence prevention program started about 2.5 years ago.
I think that the great thing that we are doing is providing these extra youth opportunities, because that's what we have to do. We have to keep these students busy. When you talk to teachers, they tell you that they can tell if a child's going to go to prison by 3rd grade on the school system. And I know that as a bailiff in the courthouse, one of the last questions we ask people all the time before we send them to prison is, what was the last level of education that you completed? And the number of people that would answer 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade is pathetic in this community. We have to get these kids, keep them in school, keep them educated, and give them an opportunity to make a fair living, and not let them think that the gangs and the living a violent culture is the way to go.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, how should Akron bring more diversity to its public safety forces?
The one thing I know about our public safety forces is you have to start with the people that apply. I see this last recruiting effort for the police department. They were the officers in charge of the recruiting. I'm sure there was a committee, but the officers, the sergeants they were out in small businesses, and then we were hanging posters for them, and you know, it had the hotline, and it had the information, it had the meetings. But then when you get the applicant pool, because they're not applying, and when we get the applicant pool, you know, then we take the physical fit, and you know, they have to pass the drug test, they have to be physically fit, and they take the test scores. Well, it's weeding people out, and I think it goes back to education. And I think the police department's out there working hard, though, to get the recruiting in the neighborhoods, to get the people. But being a police officer, unfortunately, is not an attractive job to a lot of people. It's dangerous, and I think the police officers aren't appreciated as much as they used to be, at least when I was a kid. Growing up, you'd see the police officer drive down the street, and you would run up to the car and you talk to them. And nowadays, I don't think they do that. I think the kids probably run away from police officers driving down the streets. They don't want any interaction with them. And I'm not sure that in the minority neighborhoods, they feel that the police officers are fair to them.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horry.
Yeah, I don't think kids are running away from police cars. To me, it actually starts with a concerted effort. It's got to be an intentional effort to be more diverse. And so we put together a committee that did exactly just that. And we had the record number of applicants this year with about 1,300. About 600 took the test. We're going to hire a class of about 42 or 43 here in about a month. We'll add to the police force. And when you look at what Issue 4 has been allowed to do, to the public investment into public safety, it's about $10 million each year into the fire department and into the police department. Diversity is going to be a key. But we also need good people to be able to go out there and take those tests. We've raised the age when it comes to the police department. We're now paying them in the academy. Those were all impediments before to becoming a police officer or taking those jobs. So we've made some structural changes to help.
Next question goes to Mr. Horry.
Mayor Horgan, the city has adopted its first residential tax abatement program. How is it working, and at the end, how will you assess whether it was worth it?
Excellent, thank you. No, in 2014 and 15, we had roughly 7 and 11 building permits. We're now on track to add about 1,000 when it comes to houses and new permits that are out there. The level of success is the number of homes built. We have a significant number of projects on the way. I think to me it starts with not even only a neighborhood, but also the Bowery, which is significant. Whether it's downtown housing or neighborhood housing. We did 2 market studies when it comes to the need for new housing. Hickory is being built right now after a long delay over about 15 years. We have other lots out there. We're selling a lot of property for people to be able to build houses. That abatement program is an incentive, and that's the balance back there, is how do you incentivize people to be able to do something? And to me, it's that economics background. People respond to incentives. If you can put property taxes back in your pocket for 15 years, would you build a house in the city of Akron? Some people are going to say, no, I want 4 acres. I don't have 4 acres for you. I just don't. We have an acre, we have double lots, we have those type of things. And that infill housing in and around Summit Lake, which offers some of the most beautiful views in the city of Akron, those are all marketable territories and marketable areas that we're trying to get housing in and around right there.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
I'm glad that we're having some success with the tax abatement program. I know it works, and businesses do find it successful. A lot of times they'll reinvest in their buildings when there's tax abatements. And I hope that the citizens take this opportunity and do. It's updating our housing stock, and it is important to help them. But I think in the long term, it may end up hurting us in the end, just because it's cutting the amount of revenue that we will collect. You know, if we keep giving abatements and abatements and abatements, eventually the revenue that we collect continues to go down and down and down.
So how would you change the program to make it better?
I don't know if there's a need to change the program. I just think that we just carefully have to look at how much of the tax base that we're abating between the businesses. We give out large abatements to businesses to get them to move here and incentivize them. And if we start doing that,
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
The opiate crisis isn't over, and it appears some level of funding will be released via the lawsuits by local governments. How should the money be spent?
the most important thing, the most important thing to do, once again from my experience, is we have a number of programs to get, a lot of times people, their opioid problem becomes a problem and they get arrested or sadly they pass away. That is bad on their families. But when we do arrest them and we get them in the system, we have good social services, and we do get them to rehab programs. But the problem with opiates is it's not like drinking or like cocaine or some of the other drugs where after 28 days, this is almost a 2-year process to get somebody sober and off of the opiates. So we're gonna have to, if we do get some of this money from the lawsuits, we're gonna have to build long-term residential housing centers. And we're gonna have to keep on these people and make sure that they're clean and sober, have sober living and sober living houses. And it's gonna take about 2 years to really clean these people up. I'm not gonna say kids because they're all ages and all neighborhoods now. But that's what we need to do. If we get some money, we need to put it into residential housing, sober living opportunities.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horton.
Is the question, how would you spend the money?
Right.
Okay. We had lengthy discussions about just that when it comes to, and we have a parallel lawsuits, parallel settlements, all of those. It's a community-wide effort, but I'll say this 3 times because it works. It's medically assisted treatment, medically assisted treatment, medically assisted treatment. That's one of the keys for people to be able to stay sober and to be able to get into programs and into housing and all of those different things. But we have about 4 or 5 buckets that we want to spend the money on, and we'll work collaboratively with the commission and with the advisory panel that's going to be set back up. It's not just ourselves that say, hey, we're going to need to do this. There needs to be a supply of Narcan. There needs to be, the QRT is going to need funding over the years, and we're going to need to do medically assisted treatment to answer that one question, and I'm not going to step on anybody's toes. When does recovery start?
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Horton.
Akron's infant mortality rate continues to be high, as does Ohio's. What progress has been made here, and what more can be done?
Well, actually, it is coming down, but it's not coming down enough. And I've said a lot of times, the goal isn't just for it to come down. The goal is it to be 0. And about 2 weeks ago, I got to hold my new granddaughter in my hands, in my arms. That's a round of applause. You can do that. Either way, every child in the city of Akron deserves that same process to be able to help. And so, is it progesterone? Is it transportation? We formed a task force when it comes to 22 organizations that are addressing infant mortality and going out to schools and going out to, even whether it's a younger mother, how do we get them to full term? We have a full term first birthday. We just celebrated our second birthday party. It's a significant issue for me. We want to be able to drive it down, but we're working with about 22 organizations, and whether it's community workers or whether it's transportation or all those different things that may affect infant mortality, try to drive down all of those and give people a better option and better opportunities to be able to, so they can go full term.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
I know that in the past, one of Russ Pry's most important issues was the infant mortality rate, and he always stressed that it was education. It's educating the young mothers and helping them, and volunteers that do get them to the doctor appointments and everything. I would just stress that we need to educate the young mothers to be and their families and give them the support they need, because, like the mayor said, until it's an infant mortality rate of 0, it's still a problem.
Do you see any specific conduits, ways to deliver that education?
I think it's a combined effort. It's the churches, it's the schools, it's your community centers. I don't think there's one that it's going to be everybody has to be involved.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, even with the income tax increase, Akron has yet to meet the best practices in terms of reserves. What will it take for the city to get there in terms of fiscal reserves?
I think it's just going to take an overall look at every aspect of the budget, and where we're spending our money and what we're doing with it. And it's important to we need cash reserves in a city, or in the state we had a nice little buildup. But it's really going to be looking at, this is something where my experience in business, it's going to be analytics, it's going to be looking at things. I mean, I think the workforce of the city of Akron is a pretty good size right now. I don't think we're overemploying people or unnecessarily, other than the police department. I think they definitely use more people. But I think we just need to look at everything, and that's where my experience in business and making budgets and making payrolls and knowing how to live and stay within a budget. In business, we don't get an opportunity to go into the negative. Our doors shut up, or our vendors stop delivering our foods and stuff. So it's just a systematic approach of looking at every department.
Well, you failed to
Rebuttal,
mention.
Mr.
Wait for it.
Rebuttal, Mr. Ward.
You failed to mention that I actually doubled the city's reserves, or nearly doubled the city's reserves over the last 3 years. And that's taken that systemic approach, because the microphone just died, and I'm just going to have to yell a little bit louder. But here's the thing: we do take a systemic look. We have to have a balanced budget every single year. We cannot overspend to be able to do some of those things. We'll continue to look at those reserves and hopefully be able to build, over the next 3 to 4 years.
Can we get Mr. Horrigan's microphone fixed, please?
That would be Phil Paul 101.
Sure.
I know, I saw that.
You go to preschool.
Sorry for the interruption, folks.
You can have ours. Thank you.
Where are we at here? Next question goes to Mr. Horrigan, who I hope we can all hear now.
I just had one follow-up on the infant mortality. Do you have a goal in mind, a number, something that you're shooting for in terms of the city's rate?
Yeah, 0.
Well, okay.
It's
When will
not
that be achieved, in your second term?
I don't think we can necessarily put it, and the question was, whether infant mortality, yeah, we'd like to cut it in half in the second term. Knock on wood, and I'm fortunate to be reelected, yeah, we'd like to cut it in half, from its current number. We do see it trending downward, but we'd also like to see that trend downward at the same pace as white children, that the infant mortality rate has come down a little bit quicker than African Americans.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that was it. I got the question on cybersecurity. Given last year's attack on Akron and other cybersecurity attacks on small and medium-sized cities around the country, what have you been doing to ensure cybersecurity for the city?
I assume you're asking me that question?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because you're looking at me, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the good thing about the cyber, and there's never a good thing about a cyber attack, when the systems worked, there was no personal information lost, no money was lost, but also highlighted to us about what the role is of information technology and the infrastructure needed to protect the city. And so for the last 6 months, we've been going through and developing a plan, specifically when it comes to in and around our water infrastructure, public safety, communications. What does all of that look like? What do we own? We were partnering with the county on some of those things. We pulled that back a little bit. And now we're asking ourselves and being implemented. The bottom line is that we're gonna have to spend more money on resources to be able to beef up some of that, when it comes to personnel, when it comes to servers, whether we're going to cloud technology. All of that is gonna be detailed over a 3-year process where we invest in the right amount of people, in the right amount of infrastructure to make sure that the city is protected.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines?
With cybersecurity, I'm not a computer expert, but in the business is what we do. We do hire firms and computer companies that know how to do that. And I think the city, that they learned, and they partnered with the county, and they, at one point, I believe they had like 30 engineers or computer guys working on it. So the key is just to make sure the people we hire in those IT departments and the outside contractors are using the best practices and protocol. And if we have to throw some funding at it, that's an important thing to throw some funding at.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Mr. Sines, what is the appropriate relationship between the city and institutions of higher education?
As a graduate of the University of Akron, I definitely know how important universities are to the economy of the city, for sure. So they have to work together. I mean, especially in our situation, the university is right on top of the downtown. So I think probably sometimes they want some property, and other people, private investors, want those same properties. But it's just, having a good working relationship with the university, the president's office, the trustees. There are a lot of alumni, I know in particular, that live within the city limits. So they're gonna, when you talk about growing the population, like getting people to come to your university, I grew up in Cuyahoga Falls. And I moved to Spicertown in '93, and I stayed in the city. And that's going to be one of the things that we have to do, is get kids to come to our university. The university right now is doing really good. Enrollment might be down, but the students that we're putting out I think are fairly well educated, and we're getting a good reputation. The law school's amazing, and the nursing school's amazing. So, and the Bliss Institute is amazing. But we just have to have a good working relationship with them.
Rebuttal, Mr. Ward.
Yes, well, you can't rebut that. You asked in a word, what's the appropriate relation? It's marriage. It really is. You have to be enmeshed with each other. I had a great dinner the other night. We've always worked very closely with the university. And I had a great meeting the other night with the new president of the university. We talked again a little bit here today. We need to work together on how we're doing everything that we're doing, whether it comes to planning, adding, public safety, all of that. And we have already started those relationships, and they've been going on for years, but we've started a lot of, I think, different relationships when it comes to how we can keep kids here, what's the economic opportunity when graduates graduate, but also what's their long-term goal? What do they want to see besides just growth? What does their physical space look like? That takes a lot of time.
Next question goes to Mr. Poirier.
Mayor, if you get the city council you've supported in the election, how will that help you move the city forward?
I spent 7 years on Akron City Council, and I had a great working relationship with my council members and with the mayor's office. We didn't agree all the time, and he would let me know, quite frankly, anytime that he could, which is, you're not supposed to agree on everything. Even from the very beginning, I think I've been very transparent in the mission of what we want to accomplish in growing the city's population and respecting, those council committees and that council leadership that says, these are the things that we're gonna bring to you, and be transparent as possible. Set aside time on Mondays to meet with council members if they care to. I'll continue to respect the legislative body, having spent 7 years there, and try to incorporate, what do they want to see out of the city? And it's asking that key question, what are your goals? Besides just on the neighborhood level, specifically at the at-large level, what are some of those goals that you want to see? And I think we all want to see the same thing. We want to see the city grow. We want to see more people. We want to see stable housing. Those aren't divergent of each other. How we get there, I've laid out a vision for the city of Akron that I plan on executing, God willing, if I'm reelected over the next 4 years.
Rebuttal, Mr. Sines.
I think one of the important roles of the city council in a council mayor system is to be the check and balance on the mayor. And at times, the people in the neighborhoods and the community feel as if their city council person isn't getting a fair shake with the administration's offices, and some of them did have opponents in the primary, and some of them, and then some of those people lost. So I think it's just important for the neighborhoods and the council people to stand up for themselves and also have their own opinions and be the check and balance on the mayor's office.
How do you plan to work that dynamic, if I can follow up, Bruce? How do you plan to work that dynamic? Because if you're elected, you're going to have a different letter next to your name than just about everybody on council, most likely. So how do you plan on working that?
I think right now I think I pretty much know all of them. I'd say I'm friends with a couple of them. So I have, it's got to be a professional relationship. We are out there trying to do things that are best for the city, and it goes back to there's not a Republican way or a Democratic way to do that.
Next question goes to Mr. Sines.
Following up on that comment, where do you stand on nonpartisan elections for the city? And should this be a subject taken up by the Charter Review Commission that's coming?
I think if the Charter Review Commission doesn't take it up, I think the people will. They're circulating petitions right now, and I support nonpartisan citywide elections. I think it's a great idea for more reasons than it would give the Republicans a chance in the city. But I think that a nonpartisan election in general, it takes away those labels. It makes us just the people of Akron. It's not the Republican guy, the Democratic guy. It takes away the conflict, and if we can get better people running by using nonpartisan ballots, that would be a success for the city. Other large cities in Ohio are nonpartisan elections, and I know that here in Summit County we have a different way of doing things, and a lot of them go back to old-fashioned politics, but I do think that we should move forward with nonpartisan elections.
Rebuttal, Mr. Horrigan. And panel, we have time for one more question.
I'm not in favor of taking information away from people so they don't make a choice. Either way, sometimes I think you hear complaints about the process and say we need to go to nonpartisan because you'll get better candidates. To me, that's a lot like complaining about the refs and losing the game. You can run better candidates. You can do those things that make you a better candidate. At the end of the day, I've spent 21 years in public service plus teaching. It doesn't matter what the label is next to my name. I'll run on the record that I've created. And to me, it's not about D or an R. It is about customer service, and it is asking me about, how do we care about residents and businesses? How do we see the city grow? And it's asking that key question, how do we help you? This is public service. And I think for the longest time, public service has gotten more of a bad rap than it should. There's a lot of good people that are in public service.
Mr. Horrigan, last question here from the panel.
Akron has the Greater Akron Civility Center. What are you doing, and what would you do to ensure civility goes beyond talk?
You're probably asking the one question that I didn't research that much on. But even being part of the opening of the Civility Center, I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to things that happen nationally, usually flow down locally. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or any other label, people say, well, that person's a Democrat, and then they don't talk to each other. It's not, the issues are difficult enough to talk about. We have to learn how to talk to about some of these subjects. I think most times we will find common ground to be able to do that. Modeling is a great way to do that. I think I've led a pretty modeled civil public discourse. This is all part of that process. A debate about ideas. It's not about personality, it's not about me, it's not about Josh. it's about what are the ideas that best move the city forward. We all can take a tune from that. And I think the university, I think the Civility Center can help a long way for a lot of us to be able to do that. But it kind of starts with all of the institutions doing the same thing.
Rebuttal, Mr. Science.
I'm by nature, I'm a service industry guy. I mean, I do everything from wait tables and buy bartend, and now I own a restaurant. And I own a restaurant in probably a little bit tougher neighborhood. And when you look at it from a service point of view, you know, we serve everyone. We don't care who you are or what you're like. I'm just by nature, you know, I think that everyone can get along, and we can, you know, you help everyone. And hopefully, by having this Civility Center, we get like some of the people, all of them on board, and we let people know that we're not, you know, we're not trying to be mean to you, and we all got to get along.
Thank you, panel. We've ended the part of the questions from the panelists. At this point, each candidate can ask the other candidate one question. We'll have 90 seconds for the answer to the question and 45 seconds for rebuttal. Keeping the same order that we had before, Mr. Sines, you can ask the question of Mr. Horrigan first.
I guess the question is a little bit lighthearted. I bought this suit at JCPenney at Chapel Hill, so I was wondering where you got your suit from.
Joseph A. Bank. It's about 4 years old.
I'm not sure what the rebuttal is.
I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Horrigan, you may ask.
Yes, I have a question. Having spent a considerable amount of time, you know, serving burgers across the city for one institution, and obviously visiting another one that's just across the line, and knowing the history of how long yours that business has been there, it's kind of a twofold. Have you tried all three, and which one's best?
Well, as a North Hill guy, I grew up on they are number 3 actually, and then I also go to number 2 every once in a while, and I like their burgers. But the best one is number 1 is Bob's Hamburger.
I've tried all three, to tell you the truth. I'm partial to where I worked and helped, you know, pay bills, and so I do squeeze over there every once in a while. So.
Okay. At this point, we have closing statements from each candidate, and keeping with the same order again, each candidate will have 90 seconds for a closing statement. Mr. Sines, we will start with you, please.
I want to thank everybody today for coming and supporting the democratic process and the debate, and letting we're getting it out on television. I think I would be a great leader and mayor of this city. I did grow up in Cuyahoga Falls, and I often would read that was when the newspaper came in the afternoon. You'd come home from school, you'd open up the newspaper, and you'd read about the mayor of Akron. And I always had dreams as a kid of growing up and being the mayor of Akron, and just being afforded this opportunity by the people of the city, and knowing that there's people out there that want me to be the mayor of the city, it makes me happy to know that people believe in me, and I know I can do a great job. Whether it was when I took up ring announcing, professional wrestling, I had no experience, and in mixed martial arts, and now I'm the top ring announcer in Ohio. So people may say I don't have experience, but in my businesses, in my other roles in life, I study hard, I work hard, and I will dedicate myself to the people of Akron.
Mr. Horrigan, 90 seconds to close the statement.
First, I would like to thank the Press Club and all of you for attending this afternoon, and my family who was here. Thank you for always supporting me. You know, in Josh's credit, I give anybody a lot of credit who has put themselves out there for public display, to be able to be criticized at some point. I just hope more people think that they want to vote for me than you, and that's either here or there. It has been the absolute pinnacle of my professional career to be the mayor of the last 4 years. And would you have imagined over the last 4 years that, you know, eBay and Amazon would have established a significant presence in the city of Akron? That we would have been able to invest probably north of $10 million into each the police and the fire department and our infrastructure over the last 4 years. I can't wait to imagine what's going to happen over the next 4 years, and I respectfully and humbly ask you to vote for Dan Horrigan, Mayor of the City of Akron, on November 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. A lot of comments, a lot of dialogue is going on. Thank you for being respectful with that today. A lot of you are reaching out to each other to maybe meet up and get together. That's great. Keep these conversations going. But remember, at this point, get out and vote, right? Go ahead and share this video around wherever you feel it's going to be most appropriate to do so. The footage and audio that I just captured is going to be rebroadcast on WAKR this evening. So if you didn't get a chance to watch this, you can either watch it or if you want to listen on the radio, it'll be on later on today. All right? So once again, thanks for tuning in. This is Hank signing off. Don't know where I'm going, but there ain't no sense in being late. And everybody join me in saying goodnight, Shirley.